So our opening keynote speaker is a really interesting guy. We got a chance to chat last night at the speaker reception and again this morning. Chip told me that when he was 12 years old, he told his dad he wanted to be a writer. And his dad told him, well, all writers are either broke or psychotic, and most of them are both. So he gave up his dream of being a writer back then. At the age of 26, he started his own hotel, which became the second largest boutique hotel chain in all of the United States, Joie de Vivre. And he did that for 20 some odd years, 24 years. And decided to slow down a little bit. Obviously, travel has been a big part of your life since he was 26 years old. And now Chip was been to 30 festivals in 22 countries in the last year. Is that right? So, and that was his plan, was you're going to go travel the world and travel the festivals and write about festivals. And then he had a dinner with a guy, with the founder of Airbnb. And then he had another dinner with the founder of Airbnb. And then he'd asked him to come and give a talk about hospitality to the company. And Chip came and he gave him a talk. And then they said, you know, we really want to be a hospitality company, Chip. We don't want to be a tech company. Would you be willing to come and be our head of hospitality for Airbnb? And they convinced him. They twisted his arm. He really tried to get his way out of it. They told you it was going to be a part-time job, right? And now it's a full-time job. And so Chip's got a lot of great stories to share. Please welcome our opening keynote speaker, Chip Conley.
It's a beautiful day. Sky falls, you feel like it's a beautiful day.
I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little bit, I don't know if it's the jet lag or Guinness, or for those of us who are speakers, we went to the distillery tour before that. So how are you feeling this morning? You okay? Yeah. So yes. It's great. No, I love being in Ireland. I have Irish roots. I wrote a blog post last week on the 5 best countries in the world for hospitality culture. And Ireland was one of them, one of the 5 best in the world, in my opinion. So I will tell you, though, last week when I was reading and preparing to come, I read about Arthur's Day. Are you familiar with Arthur's Day? For those who are local, of course, you've heard of it. It's basically an experience where the pubs of Ireland all open up and celebrate Arthur Guinness. And there was a little known fact that I read in the article last week, and that is that the average Irish adult spends twice as much money on alcohol as clothes. $2,800 to about 2,000 euros per year per adult on alcohol. And just think about it, there's some people who don't drink. I mean, do the math and you say, wow. Well, the Irish will be known for their whiskey and for their beer, maybe not for their fashion, but definitely known for their hospitality, and really appreciate being here. So I'm going to talk about, I'm a host, you're a host, and talk about the theme of hospitality and hosting as it applies to writing, travel writing, and blogging. We share something. We share a common interest and love of writing. My father, yes, thank you, Rick. My father did tell me at age 12 that I should not be a writer when I grow up. But then, 15 years ago, I wrote my first book, and then I've written 4. And I love writing, and I love writing about travel. So I like writing, I like travel, and I like figuring out how to create a business out of a passion. And that's something we have in common, and it's part of the reason you're here, is because you have a passion, and how do you turn it into a business? So I'm going to talk about that today. I'm also going to talk about my love of hospitality, and it really starts with a story about a woman in the Black Forest. Anybody here from Germany? Anybody? Okay, so the Germans, while German hospitality isn't necessarily a phrase that rolls off my tongue, not saying anything against the Germans, but my experience of hospitality started in Germany. So I studied in college. Part of my college was my junior year of college. I lived in England and studied there, and I went to Germany at age 20, and I was hitchhiking on the Autobahn, which is a sort of a futile task. And I got some kind of intestinal bug, and I was quite sick. And every 5 minutes or so, I was running off to the bushes and not feeling well at all. And so finally someone picked me up. He could tell I was sweating like I was quite sick. He took me to the nearest town, which was a town called Bad Ems. You know Bad Ems? I don't even know if you know it, the Germans here. It's a tiny little town in the Black Forest. And he took me to a bed and breakfast. And he just deposited me there. And he said, this woman, Maria, will take care of you. And I didn't speak any German. I had almost no money on me. I was sicker than I had ever been in my life. And all of a sudden, I'm in a place where I don't know anybody, and I don't know who Maria is. But for the next 3 days, Maria took care of me. Basically, I went straight from that hitchhiking car I had been in to the bed at Maria's place in her bed and breakfast. And for the next 3 days, I just slept. And strangely enough, Maria knew me well enough, having just met me, that she could know when I was going to wake up, because I would wake up like in the middle of the afternoon, and there was a beautiful warm cup of, or bowl of chicken noodle soup. How did she make it warm and know that I was going to wake up just then? Maybe it was the aroma that woke me up? I don't know. But I ate soup. And then she deposited 3 days worth of International Herald Tribunes, which I was excited about, since I couldn't read the local papers. And then when I was finally well enough to walk, because I really was so weak that she had to help me into the bed, I went for a little walk around Bad Ems, this tiny little town, and she showed me the nooks and crannies of her favorite little village, the place where she lives. And I left 4 days after I had arrived, physically better, emotionally robust. And I realized that hospitality, in this case, this woman being a host, a bed and breakfast host, an innkeeper, had actually she hadn't saved my life, but she certainly made my life a lot better. And there's something quite noble about the idea of taking care of people who are far away from home, especially when they're in trouble. So that experience with Maria led me 6 years later to starting my own company, which I'll talk about in a moment. But I do believe that hospitality is a very noble profession, and travel and the idea of taking care of people while we're traveling is very important. So today I'm going to talk a lot about the idea of what does it mean to be a host. And I'll explain how I think that relates to writing and blogging. And we'll have Q&A. We'll have a short time for Q&A at the end, so if anybody has any questions. I'll try to tell you a little bit of my story, but I'll spend most of the end of the time just talking about my thoughts about travel blogging. And I'm like you. I blog, and I get depressed when I see no one actually make any comments on my blog post. It happens all the time, actually. So let's start. So I started this company. This is America in Chains. And it's sort of weird, actually. Here we are at an Irish hotel, the Burling. They used to call this the Burlo, right? And now it's a hotel in chains. It's actually it's a Hilton-related hotel, a DoubleTree, which is fine. But when I started my company at age 26, I decided to call it Joie de Vivre. And it's not a very practical name. It's hard in the US. It's hard to spell it, hard to pronounce it. But I love the fact that the idea of having your mission, creating joy of life, was also the name of the company. So that's what we were doing. And my first hotel was a motel in San Francisco's Tenderloin district, which is a neighborhood you don't walk through, you run through it. And this place was called the Caravan Lodge, and it was quite famous. It was quite famous. It's more infamous than famous because it was very, very popular at lunchtime, and it did not have a restaurant. If you know what I mean. I understand. Actually, when I was buying the place from the guy I bought it from, he was in bankruptcy. I said, "What's your annual occupancy?" And he said, 142%. And I said, "How do you do that?" And he says, "Oh boy, you're naive." So, yes, it was an hourly motel. And but I turned it into this crossroads for creative people. It became sort of a rock and roll hotel. It became famous. Bono stayed there. Sinead O'Connor stayed there. Lots of famous Irish musicians stayed there. What I learned quickly in the boutique hotel business, and back then, this is the mid-1980s. I'm very old. So this is a long time ago. And I knew that boutique hotels, which frankly, when you're in Europe talking about boutique hotels, they scratch your head and say, what are you talking about? Because independent boutique hotels have been around for a long time here. The US is sort of a chain hotel place. And generally speaking, the boutique hotels became the disruptive innovator in the hospitality business in the US. And I happen to be one of the first to be part of that. And what I learned about boutique hotels is it's not about you are what you eat, it's about you are where you sleep. And what I saw quite quickly is the people who fell in love with our hotels actually saw the hotel as almost a mirror of their aspirational self. Every time we created a hotel, and we created, I'm really proud to say, over 26 or 7 years, I've created 52 boutique hotels. And every single time it was based upon a different magazine. So it's hard to see that, but the first hotel, the Phoenix, was a rock and roll hotel, and it was based upon Rolling Stone magazine, because magazines and boutique hotels have something in common. They're very niche-oriented and very lifestyle-oriented. So this first hotel, the Phoenix, was based upon Rolling Stone, and we came up with 5 adjectives that defined Rolling Stone magazine: funky, irreverent, adventurous, cool, and young at heart. And everything we did in creating that first hotel, from the kind of staff we hired funky, irreverent staff, to the kind of style we created in the guest rooms, all had to come back to those 5 adjectives. What we learned quite quickly, though, was that the people who fell in love with the hotel saw the hotel as almost a reflection of themselves. They thought of themselves, by staying in that hotel, they thought of themselves as being funky, irreverent, adventurous, cool, and young at heart. Now, not everybody wants to be funky and irreverent, including my mother. My mother didn't like the Phoenix a whole lot, and so I created the Hotel Rex for my mom, which was based upon the New Yorker magazine. And this is a hotel in the Union Square area of San Francisco, much nicer neighborhood. But what I started to learn is that each time we created a hotel, if we created a personality that defined the hotel, and it was a very soulful, holistic personality, and what we found is that people fell in love with the hotel. We grew to be a $250 million a year company, and we spent less than, how much was it? Less than $50,000 a year on advertising for a $250 million a year company. Because of this, because we created a hotel that people fell in love with, a small niche of people, and then they told all their friends. And in the era of social media, it became even bigger. So as we grew, one of the things that became very clear to me was that I couldn't be at the front desk of all of our hotels. So you know what they call the people at the front desk of hotels? Do you know the name that we call? Many of you, some of you may be from the hospitality business. What are we usually called at the front desk? Concierge? No, the concierge is the person who's helping you with other things, but the clerk, the front desk clerk. Isn't that an awful name? The front desk clerk. So I just said, we're getting rid of that name, front desk clerk. We're going to call our front desk people hosts, because that's really what our front desk staff does. They're ambassadors. They're there. And so each of these people are hosts. This is one of our hosts from the Hotel Rex. And on every front desk, what we would have is we'd have a profile of who the host was. So when you came on your shift at 3 o'clock, from 3 till 11, you put your little host profile there that said what you loved about whatever city you were in this case, San Francisco, what you loved about San Francisco, what you didn't love about San Francisco, and you don't think a tourist should waste their time on, et cetera, et cetera. And then in the case of the Hotel Rex, which has the theme of being a literary hotel, the host would put their favorite book up as well. So it was a very literary. So again, everything was very thematic. What I learned over time is that if you treat your people like they're a host, I know there's lots of hoteliers out there who treat their people really badly, and then they somehow think that their people are going to go and treat the guests well. Well, that's sort of like fallacy thinking. So if we treated our employees and our front desk hosts like hosts, they treated our people like our guests like hosts. What we learned over time, and again, you're going to see a few pyramids today, because I'm going to show you a pyramid that applies to bloggers. But how many of you have heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Yes, I thought so. So this is probably one of the most iconic theories of psychology. We used this theory of psychology, and we said, how do we apply it to our company? And let me explain that for a moment. Just for those of you who don't understand the theory, basically what Abraham Maslow said in the 1940s and 50s in the United States is he said, why is it, he has a famous phrase, he said, if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a... Now, you've heard that many times, but Maslow was the first one to be attributed that particular phrase. What he was talking about is that why is it that we only focus on worst practices in the psychology profession? Why don't we focus on people who are healthy and happy and what he called self-actualized, being all they can be? So we applied this to our company, to our employees, to our customers, and ultimately we turned it into, first of all, we looked at it, what's the hierarchy of needs for our hotel guests? And we applied it that way, and this is what it looked like with that identity refreshment at the top. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you what I think the hierarchy of needs is for your readers. For the readers of your blogs, what is their hierarchy of needs? But this is what we said is Maslow's hierarchy of needs applied to the hotel guest experience. Then we actually took it down to just 3 basic themes: survival, succeed, and transform. And this is the themes as applied to the customer experience. So just think about it for a moment. How many of you are here staying at the DoubleTree right now? Most of you, right? So you have some basic expectations when you're staying in a hotel, right? The baseline is you want those needs met. And those are sort of what I call your survival needs, and that creates satisfaction. And if you don't get that right, if you as a blogger don't get that right for your reader, then generally speaking, people won't go up higher on the pyramid. And similarly, in a hotel, if your toilet's not working, you may have had the best front desk experience where the front desk person, the host here, might have treated you really well. But if you go to your room and you have bed bugs, I'm not saying that the DoubleTree has bed bugs, it does not have bed bugs, or if you have a mattress that has a big bow in it, or you have a toilet that doesn't work, that's a baseline that you're looking for. Middle of the pyramid is desires, and the top of the pyramid is unrecognized needs. Think about the companies that you most love in the world. Think about a company that you're just evangelical about, you just think the world about. Typically, the people that we buy from, that we feel that way about, they have delivered something to us that we hadn't even asked for or imagined. We created a hotel in San Francisco called the Hotel Vitale, which is a luxury hotel on the waterfront in San Francisco. And this is 12 years ago that we started the concepting of that hotel. And I told my partners in this hotel that I wanted to create a yoga studio in the hotel. And they thought I was crazy. And I wanted it to be on the penthouse level with views of the bay. And they thought I was nuts. They said, how do you know that people want a yoga studio in a financial district hotel in San Francisco? That's crazy. Maybe at a spa or a resort, but why in a financial district hotel? And they said, show me an example of a hotel in the world that's in a financial district that has a yoga studio on the penthouse level. I said, I can't show you that. And then they said, show me an example of a hotel, or of one of our existing hotels, where the guests are asking for a yoga studio in the hotel. I said, no one's ever asked for it. They said, then you're an idiot. Why do you want to put a yoga studio? And I said, I just have this hunch. I know yoga is getting bigger, and generally speaking, the people who are doing yoga more and more are professionals. And if you travel, as we all do a lot, you know that you get out of your rhythms when you're traveling. And yes, business travel, this is a particular hotel, the Vitale, a luxury hotel, that particularly is attractive to business women. And I said, I just have a hunch. And my hunch was right, thankfully, because they let me do it. And it became one of the primary reasons why that hotel became the most successful luxury hotel in San Francisco. So if you meet the unrecognized needs, the thing that the guest or your customer or your reader wasn't even thinking about, you end up creating more of a customer who is evangelical, meaning they're incredibly, incredibly loyal to you. So let me move forward. And this is a bunch of the hotels. Let's move on from that, though. But I feel very proud of spending 24 years as the CEO of a company I started and growing it to 3,500 employees. And then I decided I was going to retire. I was going to go write. I was going to do the thing I wanted to do so much. I wanted to go write more. And so I sold a majority of the company to a guy named John Pritzker. His father started Hyatt. And I decided to move on and start writing. And I wrote a couple books. And then, out of the blue, I'm sort of a rebel at heart. I started watching this weird little company, Airbnb. Who the hell are they? What a terrible name. I was like, that's a terrible name for a company. Why did they come up with that name? Right? Okay, well, maybe not. Maybe you love it. Oh, that's good. Thank you. Maybe you don't even know what Airbnb is. Okay, so let me explain. If you don't know what Airbnb is and you're a blogger, uh-oh. You should be using Airbnb because, you know, it's a pretty affordable place to go and find usually a good place. Long story short is, here's the interesting story on Airbnb. It all comes back to now we, because I'm part of the company, they basically became the disruptive innovator, just like the boutique hotels were, but in a much bigger way, more recently. Only 5 years ago. The company is 5 years old. And they started by solving a problem. And the initial problem that Airbnb was trying to solve was there were two founders who were 26 years old. I was 26 when I started my company. There were two founders who were 26 years old, and they had an apartment in San Francisco that they could not afford to pay the rent on. And there was a conference coming to town, a design conference, and all the hotels were filled up. And so they created this company, Air Bed and Breakfast. Why did they call it Air Bed and Breakfast? Because they got air mattresses and they put them on the floor of their apartment and they rented it out to people who were coming to this design conference. In 2007, this is a true story. These guys are billionaires now, but I mean, it's a true story. So Air Bed and Breakfast started as just a little idea with these two 26-year-olds. And what they saw is that a lot of people wanted to stay on their air mattress on the floor. And so from there, they grew it. This is actually the two founders and on the sides, and then the middle, Nate, who's their third founder. They're young guys. So what's interesting is this idea of opening your doors and opening your home to someone from another place to come stay with you. In fact, 70% of the guests at an Airbnb listing are foreign. 70% of the people who stay at an Airbnb establishment are from a foreign country. So what they were able to prove was that there's a lot of people out there who want to actually go stay and have a localized experience. Why I started to notice these guys was because I like design. Boutique hotels are design-oriented. 2 of the 3 of these guys went to the Rhode Island School of Design. It's a very design-oriented company, if you've seen the website. They were very host-focused. I started a company and called my desk clerks hosts. The people who actually give the service in this company are not the employees. It's the hosts. It's these 500,000 now. There are 500,000 Airbnb listings around the world in 192 countries. In fact, statistics I'll show you. This is in 2009, how big Airbnb was. It was primarily, the dominant market for Airbnb was New York. And then here's 2010, 2011, it's infectious. It's like a contagion. 2012, I don't have 2013 up here, but if I did, you'd be shocked at how it is. There are now 500,000 listings, 35,000 cities, in 192 countries. So during the Q&A, you're welcome to ask me a couple questions about Airbnb. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I really want to get to talking about you and talking about the writing piece of this. But what's interesting to me about this is they met an unrecognized need. Why? And especially, why has it gotten so big in Europe? Take a look at that for a second. Let's go back for 1 second. Europe is the biggest market for Airbnb. It's a San Francisco company. Why is Airbnb so big in Europe? You tell me. Hotel rooms are small here, yes. That's one reason. And frankly, there's more of a history in Europe of people staying in each other's homes and bed and breakfasts and staying in independent places, for sure. What else? It's cheaper, and frankly, Europe's gone through a worse of a recession than the US has in the last few years. So not only is it good for the European traveler who wants to save money, it's really good for the European host who, think about a couple who had 2 kids. I was talking with someone yesterday, couple, 2 kids in Portugal, and actually no, it's not Portugal, it's in Madrid, and they have 3 bedrooms in their home. They only use 1. Why not open up the other 2 and have people stay in there and make some money? So long story short is it's been very big, and that's part of the reason why the Dublin hub for, the European hub for Airbnb is based here in Dublin. But let's move on. Okay, you've seen that. Let's talk about being a host. That's the #1 core value of Airbnb. How are you a host? And so being a host is sort of predominant because that's really what we're in the business of doing. What I love about this company is the fact that they're in the business of teaching the generosity of spirit of hospitality to hundreds of thousands of micro-entrepreneurs in almost 200 countries in the world. That's actually my job. I'm the head of global hospitality for Airbnb now, and that's very recent. So it's exciting because it's the idea of how do you help people teach each other and and give hospitality as a way of life. So one quick story. This is Tessa in London. She was a film director who got a very debilitating disease and illness, and she was in bed for 6 months. And she was actually running out of cash, and she's a classic case of someone who decided to become a host. She became a host because she really couldn't leave her home very easily. She was not infectious in any way, but she was just very weak. And so she started hosting, and she became one of our best hosts in London because people could come to her home. She had 2 extra bedrooms, and she was able to open her home. She was able to make a living and have people come stay with her. And so it's helped change her life. So the Airbnb transformation pyramid, you're going to see a lot of pyramids today. The basic, what are guests looking for in an Airbnb experience? They're looking for consistent host standards. That's part of my job. In the whole history, 5 years of Airbnb being a company, there were no historical host standards. So part of my job is, with my team, Clement and a few others, is to do that. And how to improve the booking process as well. The desire that we think guests want is they want not just an experience at staying in a listing, we're going to try to provide more services from what we call home to home. So it's not going to be just the listing in the future. We'll do more than that, and creating maybe a loyalty program. And then at the top of the pyramid, we know that our guests at Airbnb want to belong anywhere. And one of my little things I want us to do, I don't know, I probably shouldn't be saying it's a secret thing, but I'm going to say it to you, and it's probably not good to tell a secret to a blogger. Probably not. But I think what would be interesting is if I was a guest and I went to book something with a company like Airbnb, and the more I booked with you, and maybe I took a little questionnaire, and you got to understand who I was, and what I liked, what kind of design tastes I had, what kind of interests I had, personal interests, you could start curating my life for me. You could curate my life in the sense that when I go to Paris and we have, Clement, how many listings in Paris? 20,000 listings in Paris? How am I going to go on the website and look at 20,000 listings? No, you'll know me well enough so you can curate and say, here's the 24 listings that fit your personality. And if you're going to Paris and we know your personality and what you like, here's 10 things to do in Paris that fit your identity and personality and no one else's. Wouldn't it be nice if a hospitality company did that? Marriott doesn't do it, and Hilton doesn't do it. We will be doing it. So, not yet. That's in the future. So that's Airbnb. So, I'm going to now move into talking about writing and how we write. And if we're writers together, what can we learn from writing and for an audience? So when I sold my interest in a majority of my interest in Joie de Vivre, I was writing a book called Emotional Equations. And it was about understanding our emotions and the contagious nature of emotions. And I read a book by a guy named Emil Durkheim. He's a sociologist from 100 years ago. And he had this phrase, collective effervescence. And he studied festivals and religious ceremonies. And what he saw was that when people come together in some kind of communal experience, religious experience sometimes, and they actually lose track of themselves and they feel the power and the communal joy of the group, they have this thing called collective effervescence. So I started being fascinated by collective effervescence. I had no idea what it was leading to. I will tell you that one of the things that I would just give you as advice in life is just be curious. Be curious. It's one of the I met Steve Jobs once in my life, and that's the number one thing he said to me, be curious. And so be curious. For me, I was curious about collective effervescence, and I had no idea why. And then I was standing on a stage in February of 2012 in New York after my book had come out, Emotional Equations. And this woman in the back of the audience on the Q&A asked me this bizarre question. She said to me, it had nothing to do with my book, Emotional Equations. She just said, why is it that you love Bali, and Bali is your favorite place in the world? And she'd obviously done her research on that because I've been to Bali 11 times. It's my favorite place to go. And she said, you love Bali, and you are on the board of Burning Man. You know Burning Man? Have you ever heard of Burning Man? The arts festival, and yes, it has lots of myths around that. We won't even get into that. Q&A, you can ask about Burning Man. Actually, I got this at Burning Man this year from a guy from Bangladesh who's going to be creating a Burning Man in Bangladesh. There are 200 Burning Man-related festivals around the world now. So this woman said, why do you love Bali and Burning Man? She says, I love Bali and Burning Man too. Why is it that we love Bali and Burning Man? And out of the blue, I just said, I love festivals. I have been going to festivals all my life around the world. I love the communal joy of festivals. And then I used collective effervescence. I said, I love this collective effervescence that happens at a festival, whether it's Carnival in Brazil or Kumbh Mela. I was there this year. This is a picture I took. Have you heard of Kumbh Mela? 100 million people at a festival over 55 days, 35 million people bathing in the Ganges River on February 10th. I was there with them. Amazing experience. HARBIN Ice and Snow Festival. I took this picture in January this year. It's the largest and best winter festival in the world. You've never heard of it. It's a city in China with 6 million people called HARBIN. I had never heard of it. It's an amazing experience. There's ice sculptures that are 150 feet tall. I was there at Fez Sacred Music Festival in June this year. The Whirling Dervish Festival. Rumi. How many of you know Rumi, the poet and philosopher? Yes, you like Rumi? So I'm not going to do any Rumi poetry up here, but what I will say is that 750 years ago, Rumi was the first person to whirl like a dervish, like that. He's the one who sort of started it, and then the Sufi Muslims continued it, and they have a festival in central Turkey, in Konya, Turkey, for 7 days every December to celebrate Rumi's death, and they call it his wedding day, going to meet the higher being of Islam. But to be an American, a U.S. citizen who has heard all the stuff about Muslims, and then to go to this lovely, loving Muslim festival in central Turkey was really good for me. Because I think one of the things we need more of in the world is cultural curiosity. We have 7 billion people on the planet today. We will have 10 billion people on the planet in 35 to 40 years. We better learn how to have some elbow room, because we're not going to have as much elbow room, and we better be more curious, culturally curious about the other person. So a festival I love. And then that's culturally curious, Pamplona. I did the Running of the Bulls this year, and I wrote 4 blog posts telling what a terrible festival it is. I will be honest with you. I think it's an overrated festival for all kinds of reasons. But I survived. Barely, yes. I did lose some weight, which was good. So I think the more digital we get, the more we are so reliant upon our devices as our way of communicating, the more ritual we need. And this is why I think festivals are a really important component about modern day life. It actually allows us to be face-to-face and see each other in a communal joy, collective effervescence experience, and it allows us to experience another culture if we choose to. And that's why I ended up creating this website called Fest 300 and started writing about festivals. And that's getting to the writing piece. I decided I wanted to become the world's leading expert on festivals, world's festivals. And so this website, Fest 300, which just launched a couple months ago, is that. It's a celebration of the 300 best festivals in the world. And there's, so we actually only have, there's only like just over 100 of the festivals on the site already. We're actually adding new festivals each week. But I started to learn what it meant to write about something that I'm passionate about again. And I started writing about festivals. And in fact, in Galway, oh my gosh, just last weekend was the Galway Oyster Festival, right, John? So, and then there's Lisdoon Varna. How many Irish people are here? You know Lisdoon Varna? Have you ever been there? So Lisdoon Varna, for those of you who don't know it, it's actually one of the 300 best festivals in the world. Galway also made it. Last weekend, you could have gone to Galway and had oysters, and then go to Lisdoon Varna, where you do a matchmaking festival. Oysters and matchmaking, really well made together. In fact, there's this great joke someone told me as I was coming here. I said, a friend of mine from San Francisco, he said, why did God invent whiskey? Why? Anybody know? So the Irish could not rule the world. Excuse the bad humor, off color on this one, but why did God invite orgasms? So that the Irish knew when to stop. I'm sorry. Okay. It just sort of related to a matchmaking and oyster festival, but yeah, it sounded better in San Francisco than here. Okay, sorry about that. So I started writing about festivals, and I started blogging about them. And what I started to see, okay, with Fest 300, another pyramid, was I knew that what we wanted to do was create knowledge for people about festivals around the world, and create connections so people could connect with others, and then that we could create a personal and collective transformation, which is really what happens when you have that collective effervescence. And so I started writing blog posts, and this was about a year ago. And I first checked with two friends of mine, a guy named Tim Ferriss and Seth Godin. I went to business school with Seth Godin, and we wrote a book together in business school. He's a marketing guru. And Tim Ferriss is just a self-absorbed guy. But he's actually a friend. He actually came to Burning Man with me 3 years ago. But he's a very, very, very good at promoting himself as a blogger. He's the one who wrote the 4-hour work week, and he has a bunch of books that are on that. So I asked them, what's the number one thing I'm going to notice as a new blogger? And what they said, both independently to me, was the following. They said, it will feel like you are actually speaking in front of an empty auditorium quite often. And that was true. The first blog post, one of the blog posts I wrote this summer was for Il Palio. Has anybody ever been to Il Palio in Siena? Oh, it's amazing. Amazing experience. It happens twice a summer, July 2nd and August 16th. And I put a GoPro on my head, and I stayed in an Airbnb establishment like literally 50 steps from the Piazza del Campo. And I ran around it, and it was great. And I wrote this wonderful blog post, and I had all these great photos, and goose egg. Nobody noticed it. Have you ever had that experience? No? Then you come up here and talk. How the hell did you do that? No, I've had that experience over and over and over again. So let's just talk about that. What does it feel like when you actually don't feel like people are hearing you? Sort of quiet like this. Frustrating. Yes. Yeah. Well, that's what it felt like, and I still feel it all the time. I wrote this hospitality blog post that I thought was so good about the 5 best cultures for hospitality in the world, and I have 2 comments on it, so it's okay. I'm still learning. So I went back to Seth Godin and Tim Ferriss, and I said, teach me. And one of the things that Tim taught me, nice guy that he was, he did say, write a festival blog post, a guest post for me about why festivals can change your life. And make it just really personal. Stop talking about you, Chip. Stop talking about your experiences. Talk about their experiences, what experience they can have. It's like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Let's talk about them, not me. Okay. And he said, throw in 2 free Burning Man tickets and have a contest, and I bet you'll do well. And in fact, yes, we did. This post came out in mid-August, and yes, and it had the history of festivals and 267 comments. Okay, I learned something. Being a guest blog poster for someone who's got a lot of people following them is a good thing. So there are people here this next couple days you're going to meet who are much, much more established. Johnny Jett. Where are you, Johnny Jett? So Johnny Jett, that's a very established guy. He's been doing this for 15 years. Go meet him. Spend some time with him. See if I don't know if he does guest blog posts. Fortunately, Tim Ferriss does. But that gave me an audience that I didn't have otherwise. Gary Arndt, who I'm going to talk about in a minute. I'm not sure if he does guest blog posts. But figuring out a way to connect with people who've been doing this for a while helps. And then I wrote a blog post in mid-August as well. Now, I know a little bit about Burning Man. I've been going to Burning Man for 15 years. I'm on the board of directors of Burning Man, as if there was a board of directors for an anarchistic organization. Strange. And what I know is that there's this survival guide for Burning Man that's quite famous that tells you how to actually know how to experience Burning Man. So but they never had created an emotional survival guide to Burning Man. So I created that in mid-August, and the subtitle was Be Open, Be Intimate, Be Human, and I don't know, this one went really well, and I learned 121 comments. But I wrote a blog post a couple days ago about the festival in the desert in Mali, which is a very famous festival that ended because of all of the fighting in Mali. I bet I get 0 comments on that one. So what I learned from this particular festival, this post, was first of all tapping into an audience that's hungry, and 2 weeks before a festival, in this case, where they're hungry and they're really interested in anything you can get right now, was great, and it led to an incredible viral component to it. But also speaking from that place of being open, intimate, and human. And in this particular blog post, I was really transparent, and I think it resonated with people. So I wasn't coming from a place of just talking about all the great entertainment, but I was really speaking from a place of how a festival can actually move you and change you and transform you, and how Burning Man had done that for me. And so it seemed to resonate with people. So if I can actually summarize the next 5-10 minutes, I'm just going to tell you what I think are, for me, some of the key things around, yes, this is the next to last pyramid you're going to see. I know, for those of you who don't like pyramids, I'm so sorry. If I actually were to put blogging into a pyramid format of the idea of Maslow's hierarchy of needs applied to what are readers looking for, at the baseline, what readers are looking for is probably to be entertained. And that's pretty important. I mean, people want some level of entertainment. They want it to be interesting. And that may create it may meet the expectations. But frankly, for those bloggers who are great, entertainment alone, you're competing with way too many other things. Everything from YouTube to U2. To speak a little Irish there. At the middle level, I think a great blog post moves you. It goes beyond entertainment. It somehow is touching you in an emotional way. May move you to action even, but it definitely has some level of beyond entertainment. It gives you a sense of movement inside emotionally. And at the top of the pyramid, the unrecognized need that most people have if they're reading a blog post is, I didn't read this blog post because I wanted to be transformed, because I wanted my unrecognized needs met. I wrote, but if I had that experience, it's something that I'll remember for a lifetime. And there are some certain blog posts that I've had that experience with, where, wow, reading that changed my life. And I took, I created a print version of it, and then I kept it next to my bedside table for the next year. So how do you do this? I'm going to actually feature 3 of you in the audience, and a 4th person who's not here. I think the 3 of you are here because I want to just talk about 4 different people. Lola, where are you? Are you around? Where are you? Back there. So that's Lola. Lola Akamadi? Yes. So Lola has a website called GeoTraveler's Niche. And I just want to say that when I was preparing, no one paid me to profile certain bloggers up here. But I was looking at many of you who were coming, and I wanted to look at various websites and blogs. And what I loved about Lola's is the photos were just effervescent. They were entertaining. I'm not saying that she didn't actually speak to me on more levels than that, but on the basis of the visuals alone, it worked. And some of you in this room are photographers, and some of you are bloggers and photographers, which is an amazing and combustible, lovely combination. And so what I would just say is, just know that the entertainment piece of it quite often is the visual piece, for sure. We know that. The visuals usually are what get people's initial attention and what entertains them. So Gary Arndt, I mentioned earlier. I mean, this guy knows what he's doing. Gary, where are you? Are you around right now? There you are back there. So Gary knows what he's doing. We all know that. I mean, most of you know who Gary is because he's a very well-known blogger. What I really like about Gary's site, from the Maslow pyramid perspective, is a couple particular places on it. This is the part where it's the best of, and he's just got his best of collection of things. And that's what I want. In some ways, he's organized the information. The truth is, one of the challenges with our readers is they don't have a lot of time. They can't go to every single blogger in this room and read every single one of our posts. So I love that Gary has organized his information in a way that allows us to find it easily, and not just in this section where you can actually find some of that, but also in the section on where I've been. And I got my damn reading glasses here. Like my favorite cities. A lot of times when it comes to going to a travel blogger site, if I wanted to find out their favorite cities, I have to somehow go searching for it. And Gary's done a really remarkable job of organizing the information in such a way that it's quite usable. And so it's entertaining, and it moves me, not necessarily emotionally, it moves me to action, though, to some degree. Lawrence, where are you, Lawrence? You guys are all in the back. All right, hey, Lawrence, back there. So Finding the Universe, Lawrence and Vera have a site, Finding the Universe. What I love about this, in terms of what it does as we're moving up the pyramid, is in reading, and this is, again, not a part of the site that Lawrence uses as much as he used to, which is this travel blogging tips from the experts. So I just love the fact that he's profiled a collection of other bloggers and helped us understand as, what can we learn from each other? So to me, again, that's moving me in a direction of understanding why a blogger is good at what they do and what I can learn from them. And then finally, someone who's not here, as far as I know, is Abby King here? No, she's not. I know she's not speaking. I will tell you that Abby's site, which I've been following for a couple of years now, inside the Travel Lab, this to me is a site that is working at the top of the pyramid. I think all 4 of these sites are on some level, so I don't want to say pigeonhole them on one particular site. But this is a transformative site. Abby is a doctor in the US who decided to walk away from medicine and to become a blogger, and so she created her site. And take a look at the top line here, the navigation line. She's British. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Okay, good. Well, us Americans, we try to take credit for everything. So thank you. I wish she was here then. But she's great. I love her point of view and her voice. And look at the navigation. Make me think, make me smile, inspire me, tempt me, and show me. I have to say, the first time I saw her site, and I was like, oh, wow, I want to spend a couple hours here. Because just the navigation alone intrigued me. And it helped me to speak at that top of the pyramid. I think if I read Abby's work, I'm going to find something that's going to transform me based upon how she's talking with me emotionally. So, to summarize, and I'm almost done, perfect timing. I think that if we were to try to articulate what we do as bloggers and how we look at our work, we could actually put it in a pyramid. And I promise you, this is my last pyramid. Job, career, calling. Let me explain this. So you are here at TBEX partly because you need to solve the base of the pyramid. It's hard to, unless you're independently wealthy, it is hard to make a living as a blogger, as a travel blogger. Let's just be honest. It is. It's hard to do it. And it's possible to be done because there's a bunch of people in this room like Johnny who's been doing it for 15 years. So the baseline of what you're trying to solve is the money piece. And when I say money, I mean compensation, sense of job security. That's the baseline. But if that's the only reason you're here at TBEX, I will tell you there's a lot of easier ways to make money, as you know, than being a travel blogger. But it's the baseline, and you got to get it right. The career piece, travel writing and travel blogging as a career, part of what we need is we need to make sure we've got the financial stability to make it a career. But what we sometimes want from a career is recognition, comments, people following us, people reaching out to us with an email saying, wow, that post you just put up changed my life. And that's the recognition piece. What's different about the top of this pyramid, though, is when you're living your calling, you are not externally motivated. Money and recognition are external motivators, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I love about the fellowship that we have together and why you're here is because you don't do it necessarily for the money or the recognition. You do it for the intrinsic, the internal motivation. We do it for the internal motivation. And that's the calling, because it gives you a sense of meaning by actually going out and experiencing the world and being a host and sharing it. So I'll just say, and I'll summarize by saying, you are a host. I am a host. We are welcoming people in our home. There's amazing, I didn't look at my notes the whole time, but there's a definition of host I want to just read for a second, and then I'm done. The first definition of a host is a person who receives or entertains other people as guests. That's what our readers are. They are our guests. There's a second definition of host, which is an animal or plant on or in which a parasite or commensal organism lives. I hope that's not the kind of host you are. That's a host who actually, holds a parasite. Perfect. Actually, I hadn't thought about that. That is a perfect segue to Maria again. Speaking about parasites, because that's what I had in Bad Ems, Germany. My career in travel, my career in hospitality, my calling of writing about travel comes from Maria. And Maria, when I was 20 years old, and I'm 53 at the end of this month, Maria was living her calling as an innkeeper, as a host. She was giving me what I needed at the time. What you know, but it's not always evident in an empty auditorium, is that if you come from your heart and you write from a place of calling, you will be reaching out to someone out there who is actually needing what you can give them. And just know you got to get the money and the recognition and the job and the career right, but if you're not tapping into your calling in this lovely thing that we do together, then you're missing an opportunity. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you for inviting me. I felt a little awkward being here because I'm a new blogger, and some of you have been doing this a long time. And I just appreciate the fact that I was able to come and just express some of what I've learned along the way, and I wish you all the best. Thank you. We have time for questions or no? Yeah, okay.
Does anybody have any questions for Chip? If you don't mind, if you could come to the microphone. If anybody has a question, there's a couple of microphones are in the aisles.
I'll be here on the break as well in case. So.
And while you're walking up to the mics, I'll say a couple of things because while you were talking. So first of all, great stories, Chip.
Thank you.
And what we do is tell stories. I was telling John Concannon, Ireland is a country of storytellers, and this is a country with great stories to tell, which what makes it such a perfect place for TBEX. And I was just thinking about that the whole time you were talking. Katie Daly said, my hotel hierarchy of needs includes Wi-Fi at the bottom of that pyramid.
Absolutely.
Which is,
yes.
Every hotel operator needs to know that now.
Well, you know what? Wi-Fi is like the plumbing. It's become the plumbing. If you have bad plumbing, you're not happy. And Wi-Fi is a form of plumbing.
So we have a question over here.
Yes, I have a question. That was a tremendous presentation. When I inform people about how they should write blogs, my mantra is effective blogs evoke emotions. But evoking emotions and exposing yourself can be quite personally difficult. Do you have advice for bloggers how they can basically open themselves up to that?
Yes. No, so thank you. It's a great question. It was something it's in my notes I was going to talk about, but I didn't. The thing I will say is it can be sort of make you a little schizophrenic when you say, I want to be personal to the world and make yourself available, and then nobody comments on something that was so important to you, or they do comment it and they say something bad. And that's when having a group of other bloggers, you can have your support group of your bloggers that can actually understand what you're going through. Your friends who are not bloggers or not in the travel business may have no clue what it feels like, but other bloggers will. So that's part of the reason you're here at the conference and why a conference like this is so valuable, because you have the ability to actually almost create a support group out of it.
Any other questions for Chip? And while you're coming up, Shane, was that you at the mic? I couldn't tell because you didn't have your hat on there. For you, John, there you go. That's the Shane I know and love. Shane tweeted during the keynote, for you, John Concannon's passion for Ireland is infectious. And that absolutely was apparent, too. Go ahead. Question for Chip.
Okay. My name is Edmund Lee. Came in from Houston, Texas, and Memphis. First of all, like he said, it was a great presentation. I mean, I think you've moved a lot of people. We weren't expecting that this morning. I know I wasn't. But you had different brands for 52 hotels, right?
Yeah.
And so those are 52 niches.
Right.
So as bloggers, what type of advice, because I'm fairly new as well, what type of advice can you give somebody that feels like they have several niches, and how do you do that without looking like a schizophrenic person?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, exactly. Someone else probably can have a better answer to this. My own personal perspective would be, if you're starting out, better to select a singular niche and go for that and try to get really, really good at it so that people see you as the expert on that particular niche. You could do multiple ones. There's nothing to say that at the first 6 months you couldn't try 3 different ones, but see which of those seems to resonate. Because I think if you have something, if you become the world's leading expert on something, that's going to draw more and more people to you. That would be my advice, but someone else might feel differently.
What if it's a topic that might be kind of like off kilter? Like I'm really big into quantum physics, and I don't see many blogs and traveling and combining those. So, yeah, so it's like, is that too over the top, or do I just kind of keep it?
I would say personally, that would be the spice that you would add to something, but it wouldn't be the main meal. Okay. If quantum physics and travel is your primary meal, it's going to be a pretty sparse meal. Okay. I mean, I think you'd need something else that was a little bit more broad in its appeal.
So that could be the bonus that they don't know that they're getting.
That's right, exactly. That's the
that's
the unrecognized.
I can go home now. Thanks.
All right, there you go.
Thank you.
Sounds awesome to me.
All right.
One more question.
Hi, I'm Carol. That was wonderful. I actually just wanted to answer that question a little bit.
Oh, good, please.
A tip. Hi. So my advice would be to what you were saying, to guest blog. For people who are writing, who have blogs that appeal to whatever other passions you have. So I'm a travel blogger, but I'm also a mom, so I didn't want that in my travel blog so much. So I wrote in parenting sites, I guess. And then what ended up happening was that I realized I didn't really care that much about writing about my kids. So I went back to focusing more on my blog. And you'll find when you guest blog that those things that you feel are also passionate and you really want to write about, that you really find that you're not that passionate about certain things, and then you end up focusing more on the other things. So anyway.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a question? Go ahead. Is Cedric Georgie here? Are you in the room, Cedric? I saw him tweet this morning. Cedric, you might be interested in this, Chip. He has a company called Cookening. He's in France, and he was describing it to me. Oh, there you are. And he was describing the company to me. I'm like, you're the Airbnb of food.
Yes, that's
where people will come and host you. And I just thought it was, I told them, you please have to come to the show. Bloggers will love you. Where people invite you to come to their home and have dinner with them for a fee.
All right.
One more question. Let's go.
Chip, first, thank you so much for such an inspirational start to the day. I'm really passionate about helping people get unstuck. And I think a lot of bloggers here will start feeling really excited about their project, and then they'll put the first post, feel like it's an empty auditorium, as you said. So what tips do you have to help people who are feeling really discouraged and deflated and really stuck in what they're doing?
Well, again, this is where a support group can be helpful, first of all. My experience, again, was the guest blogging helped me. Once you have a post that goes sort of viral and it starts building an audience beyond who you had before, it's when you say, okay, something's working here. And so you need to have some momentum of victory, having a victory or two. So whether that's guest posting for someone else, or it's finding a subject that's going to have a natural audience. And if you really want to go lowest common denominator, put your dog in a post. Your dog or your children, usually that has a huge impact. Or cats too. Yes. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chip, so much. Excellent job. Thank you.